Okay, so today I answered a question about how to play mid fights as demo and like find damage on them, and I figured that actually could make an entire topic I could talk about, and kind of go through every map and talk about just the basic approaches for a mid fight, how to do damage, where to position, stuff like that, for a demo. So that's what I'm gonna do today. First things first, every mid fight, of course, they do play drastically different on different maps, but every mid fight still follows the same basic formula, which is, of course, you roll out. But once you roll out, there's kind of the initial damage that you get, and this phase is mostly getting damage on players that need to establish positioning. So think, for example, on Sunshine, which we'll get to. Just an early sticky in the other team's choke because you show up before the other or the enemy medic and company do. So you have time to get a sticky in that choke to hit them as they're entering. That would be a good example of initial damage. A lot of initial damage should be pretty automatic, I'll say. It should be pretty reliable sources of damage on a mid fight. But once teams actually set up positioning and start to play the mid fight, rather than just show up to the mid fight, this is what I call, or I just now typing out, decided to call the ongoing damage phase, where it's not quite as automatic. You have to think about it. Players might be trying to avoid it as well. And during this phase, if it's a mid in which you need to take better positioning from where you rolled out, then this is usually where you do so. Okay, and then the ongoing phase, or ongoing damage phase, can last, it could be very short for only like a couple stickies on certain mids where the fight is over really quickly. It might be very prolonged. I think, for example, on a Snakewater mid, where neither team really wants to commit to a plan. In that case, you might be shooting and reloading just a ton of sticks over the course of that mid fight before anything really happens, before any team wants to commit to any type of plan. So the ongoing damage phase could be very short, could be very long, depending on the mid and how fast your team or the other team likes to play. And then just kind of the end of the mid fight afterwards, which either there's a commit from your team in which you want to commit, or in some cases the other team or your team might just like lose a player early and want to leave without a commit happening. This is where things are winding down. Now, of course, a mid doesn't end with a commit, because the commit could go very well and like kill them, or it could go very poorly and you guys die and lose. Or, the commit goes poorly and you just lose the soldiers and you're going to lose the mid and then you leave. Like, and the later half of things, stuff can happen differently. But it's much easier as a demo to approach those situations as, okay, like, it's just easier to understand because you're either, killing them all from really good positioning or you're leaving pretty much. So, yeah. Rollouts are really, really important. I already talked about every rollout for demo in a separate video, so I'm not going to cover the rollout specifically here, but I think a lot of people think of rollouts as you want to show up as fast as possible, or at least as healthy as possible, what have you. And it's just nice to show up that early. And while being as fast as possible really helps on a lot of maps, not every map, and actually on Process here, for instance, if I were to just do the Cadus rollout every mid, I might be very vulnerable to just a soldier fast bomb, especially if I'm trying to get like initial damage on their demo. So just being fast is not always better. What I think is really important is consistency. And when people think just like fast or healthy is better, they're kind of missing the point where they're separating the rollout from the mid fight, when the rollout is actually like a really important part of the mid fight. and it's an accessory to getting damage. And what I mean by this is a player that can hit a rollout consistently, meaning they're showing up at roughly the same time. Excuse me. Well, they're going to start seeing patterns more. So what is a good example here? I guess a bit of a gimmick example is on process mid, since we're already here. If I roll out, I might try and get some initial spam on their demo. Early spam on their demo and process is kind of inconsistent just because not every demo shows up as fast. And not every demo is necessarily consistent. But if you can get early damage on their demo, it can be very nice. There's some times where you might want to grab the pack, other times you might not. Depending on your health, it's totally fine to just chill back kind of centrally. But like as I shoot a couple sticks, I might shoot a stick and then sink it with a lock on top of rock, and that'll like roll a scout for 150 as they're initially climbing up this rock. Now of course that's just like a lock only thing, but my point here is that that is only something that I can time out and go for from hitting a rollout consistently for long enough to start to recognize, you know, patterns where, okay, after I like shoot 2 sticks at this demo, I notice their scouts start to walk up on height or something. Maybe I just shoot 1 stick and then charge a stick to shoot there, and then I hit them as they're walking up. Stuff like that. So you can see how being able to roll out consistently enables you to recognize those timings for damage and for recognizing where players like to be positioned when. You very much develop kind of an internal clock for a mid fight, or at least the early stages of a mid fight, when people start to get developed. So yeah, rollouts are really, really important as not only a means to show up to the mid on time or early. On a lot of maps, going faster is better, but also as an accessory to getting more damage from, you know, that consistency converts into understanding where opponents might be at and when, and you get to then use your brain to punish that. So I think that's all the preamble stuff. Let us just get into the maps here. So how do we play process mid? Well, process mid is actually a weird mid because it gets played kind of differently at lower levels and higher levels. That's not a good rollout. At lower levels, it very much plays out as a rotational mid, where teams will kind of pick a side and then rotate through that side, which is an easy plan to follow. So I'm not going to knock it too much. But for a reason I will cover more thoroughly when we get to Sunshine, it's very easy to like over-rotate and take, you know, what would be really powerful positioning and then turn it into really bad positioning for fighting a team. A lot of the time this area on process is just called like the death corner because you're very confined. It's very difficult to be able to maneuver and avoid any splash damage. You're pretty vulnerable to bombs, and unless your scouts are really on top of things and playing on height and hitting their shots, then you might just get double bombed and wiped. So it's kind of nasty. But yeah, you can play it rotationally, and as a demo, you know, you're pretty much just going to be with your team. All the normal demo mid-fight stuff applies on any given mid-fight, really any team fight. As a demo, your primary job is, first and foremost, like, you want to, well, I suppose I shouldn't, like, tier it necessarily, because they all have varying degrees of importance based on, you know, how excessive they are. But high ground control is very important. Just denying players from high ground is very important. Denying their enemy combo or demo or whoever from walking forward across the point is very important, or just walking forward, you know, across whatever it is, you know, if you're fighting in a different place. And if there's out of position players, you're pretty well equipped to punish that by damaging them so they're easy to clean up. Stuff like that. So all those same things apply. If there is someone on height, absolutely you should be shooting them. If there's someone just randomly trying to cross into your territory here, absolutely be shooting them. But outside of that, if you guys are playing a right-sided mid, you're probably looking for an early commit, in which case, you know, you could be shooting sticks over this, just landing and damaging anyone trying to deny that, and getting ready to get aggressive, try and get picks, stuff like that. As far as a left mid goes, if you are playing left rotational to just commit to keep rotating, there's not going to be as many good opportunities. This is going to be more just charge stickies on height, maybe shoot across at their pack, stuff like that. Just areas where you expect enemies to be congregating. And this actually illustrates an important note, which is you don't have to see someone to damage them. If you're crossing here and you see the opponents there, and you're assuming they're going to keep crossing, you can absolutely just throw a stick over that. You don't see anyone here, right? This is all blocked. And where did that land? That landed right in front of IT. So anyone like here is going to get damaged by that. So yeah, getting familiar with the map is going to help with things like that, where you kind of realize, like, wait a minute, I can just continue to do damage as I'm crossing. And yeah. Now let's talk about more of a higher level mid, or at least the more flexible mid, in my opinion, which is a central mid. And what this mid is pretty much what it sounds like, where instead of committing to a side, you are trying to play centrally on the point. Central mids can kind of lean towards one side or the other, especially if the other team is trying to play a rotational mid. You can start to give space in one direction, or just try and lock it down and meet them. It's, you know, that's part of its flexibility, is it gets to react to different plans, versus if you commit to playing right and they commit to playing their left, then you're like locked together, right? Versus if they played right as well, then suddenly you're just rotating. Whereas a central mid, you can kind of choose to do either one. And most of the action is going to be happening across the point. With a commit, you're going to be crossing the point, focusing on that. Of course, this makes high ground denial very easy. One thing I will note is if you're too aggro, it actually becomes difficult to deny your own high ground, because let's see if we can even see where those stickies dead. You can see, like, they're deading on the very side. These stickies will arc over and land over there. So if someone is really right up here, you don't have a good way to damage them. Versus a few steps back, that suddenly becomes very easy. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You're just playing this pretty central positioning, trying to deny high ground, you know, get damage on their demo or their med or whatever. And it's quite nice. As far as mid plans go, demo is not usually a class that just has a set plan for mid like a soldier might. And it's actually like somewhat comical sometimes, where teams I've played on, or just teams, will have trouble on a mid and then talk about, like, oh, how, like, we need to, like, do something really differently, like, what are we going to do about this mid to stop losing against this team or whatever. And then, you know, soldiers and scouts and whoever are just, like, modifying their plans so much. And as a demo, I'm just like, yeah, I'm still going to show up and do the same thing, because that's just kind of what a demo does on this mid. So you don't often have, like, drastically different plans, but you can have different plans and do different things. Because if you are just trying to shoot all the exact same stickies in the exact same way, people might catch on to that, adjust their positioning. So one such plan is actually doing it. You can lay a carpet. Of course, you wouldn't do it like that. It would more so be just going for charge sticks. And then once that's there, the benefit of a carpet is that an enemy player, if they're not really thinking about it, is going to assume that those stickies that went behind them are just being single det, and there's not any danger to backing up, and then you can just det on them and kill them. I wouldn't say a carpet should be your entire plan on mid, because what if they don't back up and decide to commit? Well, you just kind of wasted a bunch of stickies for nothing, and it would have been better to just get direct damage on them. But Carpets can be a nice plan on mid. You can catch a lot of demos lacking with it. And there are other mids that throwing a carpet out doesn't hurt either. I'm thinking like a Snakewater. I'm thinking there was another one besides Snake I was thinking of. Honestly, Metal is not bad. But yeah. And this can work as well if you're just like missing. If you shoot there and their demo just kites left, then what's the point of deading that stick? There really isn't any. And you can just continue to shoot sticks, and if they aren't connecting, then just don't det. High ground is very important, and this is a good example of a position someone will play at where you can't see them, but you might be able to safely assume they're there and damage them nonetheless. Like if you see a scout jump up, you don't know exactly where they're at, but you should be practiced enough in the map where you can shoot that sticky over that dets on them without necessarily seeing them. And that's going to, you're pretty close. That's going to be like a good 60, 70 damage det. That's going to really ruin their day and their plans. And that's a good thing for your team. Yeah, I don't have a ton of things to say about process, truthfully. It is pretty straightforward with this central positioning. Yeah, I'd say it's a lot of just getting that consistent rollout and figuring out like what tricks you want to go for, but just shooting damage across the point, on height, etc. can be nice. One thing I will say is for a central mid, a lot of the time your team will gravitate towards the right side just because that offers more immediate height, like with Seagull here. And of course playing that spot I was showing on the other side, and of course like a pocket scout on rock to deny bombs. So all these positioning high ground spots are very much right-sided. So if you don't have anyone to support you, if someone, let's say like a flank scout, were lurking right-sided, they might just see a demo that's way further forward than the rest of their team, and you might get aggressed on and collapsed. In a situation like that. So be mindful of that. It can help to have like a flank scout lurking around on the floor with you or something. Or if your team is like really gravitating right side, you can start to play right side as well, more so. But that is going to make your spam across point and in some cases on height a little bit worse. Okay. Do I have any extra notes for process? I mean, big thing. Just try not to get fast roll. I mean, a soldier can just fast roll out on you. Just be mindful of that. This is why this is like the one map where it might be better to just kind of chill a little bit back and make sure you're showing up pretty healthy, because if you are committed quite far out, then it's much easier for that soldier to trade you out, which is kind of their entire plan. Okay, that's going to be it for process. Let's move on now to the next map, which is Snakewater. Snakewater is tricky. It's very simple. It's a very easy to understand map, but actually getting damage on it is tricky. Because this isn't a map where there's like really any special positioning stuff. It's kind of just what you see is what you get. But actually getting damage out can be very tough, and you will play Snakewater mids where you feel like you're in the right spot shooting all the right things but just aren't doing damage. So Snakewater mid, showing up fast is very nice on this mid. Showing up faster than their demo sometimes means you can get your first sticky on their demo. And there are actually times where I've showed up so fast on Snakewater mid where I get a sticky on their demo and still have time to get another initial sticky on their combo walking through. That's definitely going to be pretty rare, but faster is definitely better on this mid. And the packs, both lower and saw, are usually enough to top you off. So yeah. So yeah, initial damage could be on their demo a lot of the time. It's like a weird type of mid, because if you're fast enough, then sometimes you have enough time to fit a stick in before shooting saw as they're trying to enter saw. But sometimes like you have so much time that if that was your first stick, they would just see it and a scout would clear it before they walk through. But you don't really have enough time to shoot another stick. It can be a little awkward in that regard. But yeah, those are the main initial damage sources, is trying to hit their demo, trying to hit their combo. And as far as like the ongoing damage stuff, this is where things get tricky. I don't know if it's the fact that this mid is like sloped downwards or what. Maybe it's just depth perception deading too early. But a lot of this mid, in the immediate sense, is going to come down to dodging spam. And their demo is trying to do that as well. So if you're trying to hit their demo, then it can be pretty difficult because they're going to be pretty focused on avoiding those sticks. And it's far enough range that you have some type of reaction. So you really need to be on them for them to not be able to just dodge. So damage on their demo, damage on their med can be quite nice. And because of how tricky it can be to get damage, this is another mid where a carpet can be kind of effective. I'd say carpets on Snakewater are much more expected than on a map like Process, so overall they might be less effective. But again, like if your sticky's missing anyway, there's no point in deading it quite yet, so you may as well. Outside of just shooting their combo, which will like be, there. Assuming everyone's positioning is pretty normal, you can be shooting the shed. Scouts like to stand on it, and scouts will like to jump off of it, so if you time your sticky for when they're off of it and trying to jump back on, then you can catch them much easier. You can also shoot up here, because this is a spot where soldiers will like to stand, and if you can just hit them, that's going to ruin their buffs, of course ruin any crit heals they might have had, and just make their bomb less effective. And Snakewater is a very bomb-oriented mid. You're either bombing or playing to kill their bombs, basically, with not a whole lot in between. Unless, I guess, some random player gets caught, then you could, win the mid long term. But keeping their bombs from being effective is definitely a good plan. Outside of that, I am a big fan of shooting top right. It's another type of thing where you don't see it, but players love to stand here, and if you have a sticky arcing over, just deading right here, well, it'd be in the air, hitting them, that is really nice, especially because, like, if it's like a flank scout up here as well, that guy's going to be like 70 HP, and that's just really good. He's going to be really easy to clean up. So especially, there might be mid plans where your team plays to bomb top right and try and catch picks there and then win with the picks. In those cases, yeah, absolutely, you can be focusing some damage up there, because just one sticky is enough for that guy to be an easy bomb a lot of the time. If it's a scout, and like 2 stickies might just kill them outright. All the normal mid stuff applies. High ground control is very important on Snakewater. And again, some of the same positioning stuff to shoot high ground applies, where if you're directly under it, it's going to be a lot harder to adequately deny it versus a step back where your arc is much nicer. And the height on Snakewater is so weird to me because it feels very far away, but you get a lot of damage ramp up for players up there. Like, you will be hitting 80 damage stickies on those guys. I've been surprised at the number of times I see the sliver of a scout jumping up to height from back there. I just shoot 2 sticks at there, and then he just straight up dies to those stickies. That does happen. Shooting the high ground, controlling the high ground is very important. Anytime players like shove onto height, you definitely want to be shooting at them unless there's someone literally like in your face. Right side is harder to tell if someone is, aggro. Of course, I mentioned the just kind of blind spam on this corner, but if someone's pushed up here, you're not necessarily going to know unless your teammates call that, versus left, like you can see this corner, you can see when someone jumps up to it, so you're going to know much better. Yeah. Outside of that, of course, controlling enemy aggression. So if their demo's trying to cross point, then you definitely want to be shooting them. When soldiers are bombing, it's mostly your job to prevent their team from walking forward. Those bombs should be dealt with by your scouts. If your scouts are having trouble with them, or if you're playing a mid to kill the soldier bombers, then you might have like your pocket or someone bomb the bombers, just land on them as they're landing and kill them faster. But your primary job is going to be looking forward. There might be times where a bomb lands in your face in such a manner that you can continue looking forward while shooting at him. That's like totally fine to focus on them. The big thing you don't want to really do is be turning your back on, you know, the players advancing, because this is your primary focus. Yeah, and it can be tricky because on some level you might want, you're kind of torn between wanting to just cut off the players on point from walking forward, while at another point you might want to just be getting direct damage on them. And if you like shoot it too far forward, then you might still allow them some like pretty aggro spam kind of for free. But if you try to hit them directly but they keep walking forward, then you might just be shooting behind them. So that's kind of just, I guess, a DM check. It can be tricky to kind of figure out, but yeah, it's just a matter of being precise with your stickies such that you're not just shooting behind them and you're actually like, you know, adequately denying them. If they're like far enough back, don't get me wrong, like if you get preemptive sticks out, that's totally fine. Like if they can't cross further than this, then you're totally happy. But yeah, I will say something that I personally don't do much, but I do see other demos do, is go for aggressive spam left lane. And this is like during the ongoing damage phase. This isn't a commit. This is just very aggro positioning to get very aggressive spam on these players, maybe even their combo. So I guess the theory behind this is, first and foremost, left lane is pretty isolated from, you know, a lot of the action on point. So from my perspective, it would be right lane. You have this whole wall, you know, helping you against spam. Even this box to some degree. And also, if you need to kite out, you're already like pre-kited lower, which is where teams will like to kite a lot of the time. So it's not, you know, you're not straight up feeding despite how forward you are. Like this far forward in left lane would be this far forward on point, in which case, like, yeah, you are absolutely just feeding and dying if you're doing that without, you know, your team committing. So you can get pretty aggro positioning just to get aggressive spam. And this is just like something you would do. It, again, I mentioned it doesn't need a commit. That's just an avenue you're looking for aggro damage in, and then you back off, reload, do whatever. Just something to do during that ongoing damage phase. You do have to be careful about it, though. And actually, when other demos do that, I very much like to get aggro across point because they're no longer denying point. And in some cases, even carpet behind them. So that when they back up, they just instantly die. And you can even just carpet the box from relative safety so that, you know, on the flip side, if that's carpeted here, and I'm not going to know, I'm going to back up and probably be like right on it. Right here, I'm like hugging the wall so it doesn't hit me. But point being, when you recognize the other demo doing that, then you can absolutely punish that, and that's something you have to look out for yourself if you're trying to get aggro like that. Not something that I really go for ever, so I can't speak too thoroughly on it. Outside of that, right lane doesn't really function the same way as far as a pressure window goes because it's just so awkward to get to. You either have to be very slow behind shed or in front of shed, kind of feeding, taking a ton of spam. So, yeah. Right lane, however, does get used when it comes to a commit. So if your soldiers are bombing and you want to commit with them, you can go through any lane. I think good defaults for this are going to be probably a cross point and right lane. Left lane can totally work, but if there's like players here, then you're pretty easy to stuff. Because sure, you could damage them, but you're not really committing forward, and you're also pretty isolated from where your soldiers are actually bombing. So you're probably not going to get that effective of damage to help the bombs very much, which isn't great. A cross point is, you know, just pretty default. You know, you can see a lot, you can spam a lot. That's pretty solid. And right lane's actually, excuse me, surprisingly good. because it's not something that's being held that, I suppose there could be like flank members up here. But this gives you very good spam into lower, and excuse me, as I mentioned earlier, lower is where a lot of teams like to kite, so you might already be positioned in a great spot to get very good damage on those players that your soldiers are bombing. So right lane and across point are probably the best lanes for committing if your soldiers are bombing. And then left lane, of course, you can find some aggressive spam if, you know, during the downtime of a fight, or even just during that ongoing damage phase. Okay, anything else I'm forgetting about Snakewater? I think that just about covers it. Now, if their demo is positioned very left, you know what? Actually, I will say some teams will roll out catwalk, and the plan here is their soldiers are expecting to bomb players, you know, in this general vicinity, and if your beam rolls out catwalk, you're not unbombable, but bombs are very rarely gonna work. So if your team is getting like hard rolled by players, by the enemy team's bombs, then rolling your beam out catwalk is a good solution there, at least like early on. And then if you want to take a more normal fight because they're not bombing, then you can drop your beam down, rotate them out. But as a demo, what you need to know, you still roll out the same place, but you definitely position much more left-sided where you can actually get healed. Of course, this makes your presence on point a lot worse because you can't deny it the same way. So in some regard, this play also works to bait out aggression across point because you're just not in a great position to be denying that. And if they do that, then you can maybe bomb them on point. Or if you want to transition to actually like adequately denying the point because they're not bombing, then yeah, just drop your heals down and you can go back to your normal position. But while your heals are on catwalk, you definitely want to be much more left-sided in a position where your heals can heal you. Okay, I think that's going to be it for Snakewater. Now let's get into the next one. It's going to be Sunshine. Sunshine is maybe my favorite mid-fight now. And this is one where there's a lot to talk about. Yeah, so first and foremost, you have multiple different places you can roll out and multiple different sides you can play. And yeah, there's just kind of a lot. So let us get into the map anytime now, computer, so that I can start talking about it. I'm looking, I did type the command in correctly, so we should be going. Okay, so Sunshine rollouts, you basically have two places you can roll out. You can roll out to Choke or through Valley. Choke is kind of the old school rollout. That's where, you know, most people used to roll out back in the day. Valley is more of a newer convention, and I say newer like it's existed for years and years, but you know, in the competitive TF2 timescale, it's newer. What does Choke offer? Well, Choke offers a lot of flexibility early for where you want to position. Sunshine is a mid where you can play on either side. You can play a right-sided mid or a left-sided mid, and you should pick one of those sides. There we go. Okay. Let's just demonstrate. Now, my Choke rollout is probably a little... Oh, no, we hit it. So, that's actually, in my opinion, the hardest rollout in sixes. Just because this sticky on the wall is like very tricky, and then actually like jumping off and still hitting the ramp slide. They can be very tricky. But, so Choke rollout gives you the benefit of being able to play a right-sided mid or just continue left into a left-sided mid at your leisure. And of course, if you want to play reactively and then just decide, like, figure out what side they're playing and then play whatever side you want in reaction to that, then choke allows you to do that very easily as well. Downsides. This mid rollout, you show up pretty weak. Quite weak, actually. Weak enough that if you just eat an early stick walking across, you are like one hit away from dying. If a soldier goes fast and gets aggro spam from on top of Cafe or something, a few good rockets could theoretically kill you. And you have this long walk if you're playing left-sided. And of course, it's a matter of personal preference and what your team likes, but left, in my opinion, is a good just default kind of plan. I'm just very comfortable playing left. So it's going to be a long walk over there. So yeah, the choke rollout to mid on Sunshine is really not great. It sucks for a lot of reasons, but if you are playing right-sided, then you might need to go for it. Which, don't get me wrong, it's not like the end of the world. It's not like you're just going to lose your mid because your demo just shows up and dies. But there's a lot of risk associated with it that... plus, it's just kind of difficult. But yeah. The other rollout is going to be through Valley. And what Valley offers is much more health. You're already positioned kind of centrally, but realistically, you're just positioned left-sided, ready to go left. It gives you a much better spam lane initially onto into the other choke. Some demos will like shoot their stick over there or shoot their stick over there. Actually, I have seen Banny. I have not seen other demos shoot an initial stick through there to try and hit the other demo in Valley, which I might incorporate a little bit, but I feel like my Sunshine's pretty well cooked, and I definitely like the timings that I find. In any case, good initial spam is absolutely in choke. Shooting on top of this shed, scouts will very often go up there, and you can very often hit both scouts with a sticky for like 45 damage each, which is a big deal. And like, what's really good about Sunshine is when your timing and your rollout is consistent, the quote-unquote like initial damage phase is really long, where you just have a lot of really automatic stickies that are just really good damage if their team rolls out choke, because they have to do that whole walk up to get to where they want to go by Tetris, which is really good. Now, one thing about this specific walk-up that I see a lot of people struggle with is, first and foremost, like, remember, if they're behind things that you can't see, they're still there, if you know they're there. But also, if you know their demo is playing a certain side, which you'll know by this point, right? Because they're either over there or positioned here. If they're positioned, you know, kind of in between-ish, like by shed, that area, they could commit to either, but it's oftentimes going to be playing left into you. In any case, if you know their demo is, you know, over on the right side playing a left-sided mid for himself, then you know that beam is going to want to go over there. You can totally shoot into them. And what I mean by that is shoot, like lead them, so that as that sticky's landing, it's at their feet. Because a lot of people will try and shoot directly at them and then end up just shooting at the after image of the medic. But it's not too hard to get like 80 damage on the medic and a sticky on both scouts when you're showing up consistently, getting that good timing down. And that is like almost mid-winning in and of itself, because a bomb is just going to be so good once they get behind Tetris. So as a result, this is a mid that goes pretty fast a lot of the time. I think it goes well when it goes fast. What else? Well, ideally, if you're playing a left-sided mid, you want to get up to this kind of power position, and you want to get up in front of Tetris if you can. There are going to be some times where the spam is so bad that you can't. Hopefully those times are going to be pretty rare, If you find that you're consistently forced behind Tetris, then there might be something else going wrong. But yeah, you should be able to walk up Tetris. And note as well, this is another absolutely fantastic spam, is through the point itself to deny their demo from doing that same walk up if they're, playing rotational. I said playing left, I meant like playing left while, playing rotational. The other team is playing their same side, so you mirror each other. If you can get up faster than their demo, then their demo is suddenly in much worse positioning, kind of forced to spam. You can feel like if the other demo is already pushed up here, you can even feel like how cornered you are, right? It's very nasty. So if you are faster on that walk up than the other demo, then you can absolutely just either lock them out, or in some cases they're still just going to commit forward and you'll just hit them for like 100, and then that demo is like a free pick. Sometimes you just kill them yourself. You can even do something a little tricky and like carpet the backside of the point. Of course I didn't do it well here, but it would be, sticks loosely like this. In this demo, of course they can see the sticks, but they're going to be paying attention to other things most of the time and just walk across and die. That's more of a gimmick plan, not something I go for too often. Mostly it's just trying to get direct damage on the demo and the walk up. But almost that is still like kind of automatic. I would describe it as in like the ongoing phase of damage, but it's almost initial in the sense that pretty much every team that's playing rotational on Sunshine is gonna want to walk up Tetris or walk behind Tetris to get to this type of positioning, right? So yeah, Sunshine, you can just get so much pretty free damage if you know the right places to look. Of course, if there's a soldier on height, then you can totally spam that out. Bell tower's a big priority. If anyone's on bell, you want to make sure they're not on bell anymore. And that's it for like the early stuff as far as like a left rotational goes. I will say, what I see a lot of people do is, regardless of what they're shooting at, as a team they will walk up here, and then because they think it's a rotational mid, they then drop down and keep going. In theory, this can work in some cases if you're trying to out-rotate the other team and catch picks, which can absolutely work if you get onto the point really fast and you catch players that are straggling to walk up towards their Tetris. That can totally work. But once you're in this position, in my opinion, I like just staying here. Because what does dropping down on the floor do? All it does is like corner you, give you worse spam and worse positioning. In theory, if you're both rotating and the other team drops down to continue rotating into choke, why would you not just stay here and just kill them all because they just cornered themselves on low ground? There's not a lot stopping that. And likewise, that could happen to you where they just turn back and suddenly like you're just screwed because you kind of over rotated. So when I like doing on Sunshine is once you get to this positioning, the rotation kind of stops and then it becomes more central where the action will happen across point. There might be times where like spam is really bad or you just need to keep rotating to like try and get out because you're down a pick or whatever. Like, of course, it's a case-by-case basis, but by and large, I very much like aggressing across point where I can like roll their scouts on Tetris, trying to deny the bombs, shoot their demo, shoot absolutely everyone from here. The only downsides I would say to staying here centrally and aggressing across the point as a demo, first and foremost, same type of deal with the high ground. Bell tower becomes more difficult to spam if someone is like, landing on it. And you are very central to the mid, meaning you can get spammed from pretty much anywhere, but both of these are pretty minor problems. Not often people are going to be landing on bell in those moments. And if that's their soldier's plan to like deny the cross, then you can just like not cross as aggressively and focus them or whatever, adjust your plan. And likewise, sure, you can get shot from wherever, but you can also kind of shoot wherever, and you're going to have a good idea of where players are going to be at anyway. So like the big culprits, like their demo, are, I'd say they're on like the disadvantaged end of things here because you know, they're going to be like natural low ground or something, or just so close that you can kind of just play corners knowing where they're at and spam them out as a result. So yeah, once you get that central positioning, I very, very, very much like to stay here, and then if the other team continues to rotate, just turn and nuke them. If they stay in the same type of area as well, then you know, play more across the point with your bombs and stuff like that. So that's it for left side rotational, and the same principles pretty much apply for a right side rotation, which is pretty rare. Right side is more often used as kind of a mix-up strat, but sometimes you see a right side rotation, and it's basically the same thing, where, you know, once you have this powerful high ground central to the point, you know, you need a good reason to give it up. As far as, like, getting there, I will say for a right side, whatever. Let's talk about meeting now. So rotational mids are much more about positioning and focusing out picks that might be out of position, just getting good positioning that you can then win the fight with. A meat mid is, you know, positioning matters in every fight in the game, but a meat mid is much more like a firework type of mid, where it's over very quickly. Basically, if you're playing left-sided and the other team plays to meat, you might want to get some initial damage, but you're primarily focused on the commit, because there is going to be an impending commit from either the other team or your own team. Once people are in a good position to bomb, then that's probably what you want to do, because you're already going to be so close. And when the other team is meeting, Tetris actually is quite nice for obscuring sinks. You can start throwing a few stickies behind it without people necessarily realizing, because, you know, it obscures some vision. It can be nice for that. I do like arcing stickies over in a meat mid. Now, your primary job, of course, if they are walking up into this high ground area, they should be getting nuked by you. They should not ever be this far forward without getting absolutely obliterated. Of course, high ground is still very important, but this is going to be very temporary where you're positioned here, because you should be bombing. Not as a demo bombing, but, you know, as a team bombing, and you can get aggressive and just nuke whatever players are in front of you. Yeah, that's kind of the positioning component of a meat mid left-sided. As far as right-sided goes, if you can take this high ground, then you absolutely should, because it gives you such a massive advantage. But yeah, just playing good spam, hitting the height, hitting their demo, because a lot of the time their demo is going to be in a pretty predictable position here, and you can get good damage on them. It's, again, the same thing, but in the flip side. It's just about getting that initial damage for your impending commit, because your team is probably going to want to commit. And yeah, they're very DM oriented, I suppose. Of course, like, positioning and timing is a big deal. If you're just, like, standing in a bad spot and just eating a shit ton of damage, then you're probably going to lose that fight. But it is just, you know, a matter of just doing a lot of damage and hitting them a lot, which in some respects does come down to a DM oriented view, I suppose. Yeah, anything else? We talked about rotates on each side. We talked about meeting on each side. Of course, I talked in more detail about, you know, the left side rotational mid, because that's kind of like the standard that most teams go for. Oh, I will say, as far as the Valley versus Choke goes, Valley does have some disadvantages, namely that you can get fast rolled out here, and this kind of has a trade-off, because you are more healthy, so it might be easier to survive a fast rollout, but you're definitely, like, really isolated from your team. So unless they roll out Valley with you, which is an option for sure, then you're going to be very isolated and might be an easier pick. Outside of that, if their demo rolls out Choke, then they're going to show up faster, and they can sticky you out. So be ready for that. you might just want to like knock the sticks to get through, but you definitely don't want to just be locked out of the mid long term. That's going to stunt your positioning so much, and as a result you won't be able to get in these positions, you know, where you're spamming their med and, you know, spamming their demo on the walk up. You won't get there as fast. You won't have those damage opportunities anymore, and that's going to be a big disadvantage during that fight. So yeah, that is the downside to Valley. Likewise, if you're rolling out choke to play right side, you know, assuming their demo rolls out Valley, then you should be doing that to them. Just make them like pay a 60 damage tax if they want to get through, or just lock them out entirely. Because if you can do that, then that means your team can establish, you know, really good positioning on height pretty early, and then it's just a matter of like playing that positioning and playing that spam. You might just win the mid outright if you play that adequately. And that applies to a lot of mids. If you show up so fast or like do enough damage that you kind of lock them out for you know, some interval of time, a lot of the time you can, your team should be able to take really good positioning off of that. And a lot of the time, like, people will misinterpret the call of like, oh, they're just like not in, and like try to just bomb into them and like feed them picks rather than just take like the super high ground, then just play such oppressive spam that they can never get back in and it's not worth fighting. But yeah, that's a pretty rare case of just locking out an entire enemy team because you're like early enough. What else? I think we pretty much covered it for Snakewater here. Yeah. In that case, let us go on to the next map. Oh, interesting. We're going to Metalworks. Looks like, what is the most recent? I thought F7 was the most recent version, but it's not on my computer, so we're going to go to F5. Not that the mid's any different. Metalworks is considered by most to be the worst map for, or like the trickiest mid. So the spam lanes are pretty obscure. It can be hard to get good damage on, and this is a map where if there's ever a map where you need to roll out fast, it's Metalworks. And the thing is, the rollout's like not even that, it's really straightforward. It's just a bunch of stickies. So to be fast, you want to make sure you're landing as far as possible. Try not to take any, you can do this rollout without taking any fall damage, and you should aim to do that, because you can show up exceptionally weak. But yeah, you want to land as deep as you can, and that's why like pocket soldiers will hold open a shutter for a demo, so that if they really nuke their initial sticky, then they can actually land in shutter. But you want to place your stickies earlier as well, and you can use an extra sticky in-house just to get to that pack faster. The reason that this is so important is you have two doors that you can roll out to, either top left or main. If you roll out top left, you are in this position of really good high ground where you just have an immediate spam lane onto main. And if the other demo rolls out main, you might just lock them out and then force them to go backdoor, which gives your team like a really strong early positional advantage. Or their demo commits through and just eats a ton of spam, and then they have to back up and take even longer because then they have to get rehealed. So it can be really sink or swim if one demo rolls out main and the other rolls out top left, or choke, I suppose. Likewise, yeah, if you're rolling out main, then you have to be really careful, because if their demo is really fast, then this is a very dangerous door to get through, because again, especially if you use an extra sticky in-house, you are going to be weak. You're going to be very weak. So off the bat, pretty high stakes, just early arrival. As far as initial damage goes, it's mostly just going to be on their demo, whether he's in choke. You can even shoot into choke if you're faster. And then once you catch again, once you're hitting that rollout consistently, then you're going to know when the other team is going to be walking through main, and you can just meet them with a sticky as they're doing so. And yeah, once that initial damage phase is over, you're not done yet. It's still a mid where you're very much, corralled into this low ground most of the time. And there can be nasty spam from soldiers choke, from soldiers on blue crate, and just double bombs might land on you and kill you, and there's like very little you can do about that. It's just a matter of your team trading out those 2 soldiers for the demo for an advantageous fight. But yeah, it's very tough to play as a demo a lot of the time because it's just so perilous. Likewise, a scout might just be lurking on the ground and might just run at you, sometimes really early into a mid. So being positioned far enough back that you can actually react to that adequately is important. I will say, if you roll out top left, you can, as a team, play a top left mid, where pretty much everyone rolls out here, and your entire plan is just to bomb them as fast as possible in this area and take this nice high ground on point. But you can just roll out top left independent of your team, have your team still roll out main, in which case you're going to be kind of playing this catwalk as long as you can, but once the spam gets bad, or before the spam gets bad, before you take a ton of damage, you can drop down and rotate over. But that can give you nice early spam. What else? As far as a kite goes, it's really important to know where your heals are at. Most of the time, heals will default kind of kite back valley side, rather than be like over more left-sided main and kite out main. So you should, as a result, be with your combo there as well. Because I've seen a lot of demos play Metalworks mid where they take some spam, they like back up, ask for a bow without realizing that they have put themselves, put a wall between them and their medic versus actually like heading back with the heals. So keep that in mind. Outside of that, as far as things to spam, of course, any high ground you want to shoot. As far as places people will be in like spam lanes, that's where Metalworks gets kind of interesting, because you can totally shoot through the point, over the point, just wherever, just as long as you're avoiding all these little geometry. And you'll see these are all pretty much landing where players are going to be standing and playing. I suppose I can put more charge on them to get them further back, but I was kind of just uncharged shooting them to demonstrate. You could even be shooting into valley from pretty much wherever. And this is what I mean when I talk about like getting familiar with the layout of the map, is like, that a team likes to stand valley, like their heals like to stand at the entrance to valley. Is there anything actually stopping you from shooting that? I mean, not really. You can just shoot that, you don't have to see it. As long as you have a good notion that they're there, then you can shoot that. Likewise, spamming on top of the crate can be nice, just get people off the height there. And Metalworks mid is kind of a weird case, because I talked about like the different phases in the ongoing damage phase. If there's like a time where you want to get positioning, that's when you do it. Metalworks mid is a mid where you want to get positioning, but it's not always available, and that's this walk up here. There will be mids you play where you never walk up, but on every mid you'd kind of like to at some point if you can. But again, this can get spammed out a lot, and as you might expect, that's something absolutely to spam out yourself. If you see them walking up, you can totally just annihilate them there, and then make it so that walk up, is the reason that they wipe or whatever. But for lulls in combat, or if you have some advantage, converting that advantage into being on top of point is really good. Like, there will be mids on Metalworks where there's just like no one necessarily dies, or let's say like a soldier, 2 soldiers trade out, so one soldier on the blue team and the red team both die, but the other team eats a ton more spam, maybe their demo is just rolled and has to like back up to Valley and get rehealed, that's a perfect opportunity to walk up, take this really good positioning, and just not let them back in. Or just have this nice height to kill players that are maybe still in when their beam is like pretty passive, trying to reheal people. A lot of Metalworks mids are won or lost just by one team being here as the other team walks up and the team on the floor is like, yeah, this is not worth it, let's get out. So that walk-up timing is pretty important, can be kind of tricky, but once the opportunity arises, you can't take that height, and that's really good on mid. But yeah, main notes for Metal is that initial spam, either top left into main, or if you're rolling out main, you have to worry about choke, the other demo. Likewise, if you're top left, you can spam out their combo from up here as well, as they're trying to enter. Yeah, just the initial threats, that initial kind of relationship between lower main and choke is something that's important to understand and be careful of. Showing up as fast as you can is really nice on Metalworks for that reason. And yeah, just get familiar with the map layout, know what you can spam from where, because it's very tough to actually have a good grasp of the battlefield just by like the little slivers of vision you're given. So having a good idea of where people like to stand, what spam lanes you have, stuff like that is good. Also, if your team's committing, you might not have time to like walk up and commit in this sense. You can totally just peek under the point, maybe get some spam. You just have to worry because the point, there can always just be lurkers down here that are kind of like obscured, and if you are walking forward too haphazardly, they might just be ready to kill you. So be a little careful of it, but yeah, you can absolutely get aggressive under the point with a commit if need be. But I think that's pretty much it for Metalworks. It's a tricky map, just getting used to the layout is nice. Figuring out where you can get the damage is going to make a big difference, I think. Okay, moving on next to... I was going to do I'm just going to do Reckoner because I don't want to end on Reckoner. I am not talking about Granary or Villa, because those maps I just don't have enough experience on the mid-fights to feel like I have enough expertise to talk about them. I will note for Granary is like just, it can be hell for demo on mid. You're very weak and very easy to just die to spam. And it's very easy to just kill the enemy demo before he even gets a pack. So that can be very sketch. And, you know, because it can be high stakes like that, yeah, I just don't have the expertise to talk about it, or the experience, rather. And likewise for Villa, I have not played it since I was an IM player, and, yeah, I just haven't played it enough to get that kind of experience to know where the spam is at. I would just speak very generally instead of actual specific terms. That's more useful. So, Reckoner, however, I decided I'd just throw it in because... why not? I played it in main some time ago. But yeah, I don't know if it's going to be back in the pool anytime soon, but in any case, why not? So Reckoner, as you can expect, this is very powerful positioning across the point. Even up here is nice. And this... Well, let's talk about it. You can roll out to play an aggro right-sided mid, and this is a nice sync as well. Just kind of obscured. You can, you can shoot these players on this walk-up. This is, again, just a very aggro style of mid, and you just do the aggro style of mid stuff, which is just hit everyone as hard as you can, as fast as possible, and hope you don't lose, I guess. It's just a reductive way of putting it, but point being. Yeah, so for a more normal mid, well, if they're meeting, if they're trying to do that thing to you, then you can totally be doing the same thing in the reverse, but you have just better positioning, just controlling height, stuff like that is all important. But for the more standard mid, where both teams are kind of playing across the point, Shed is quite nice to stand on, actually. I did like that a bit. But this is a great case of being able to shoot at things you don't necessarily see, because if players are behind, like if you're bombing and they like kite behind, you know, either of these really, like, you know, you can shoot at them and hit them without necessarily seeing them, which is good. And yeah, just getting nice early spam is an important thing. I thought I would have more specifics to talk about this map, but I mean, it plays how it looks as far as the mid goes. You just want control of this height, so it's going to be a lot of denying their demo from walking up to the same positioning you have, reloading for a commit, stuff like that. I didn't intend for it to be this brief, but once I got in here, I'm like, yeah, I haven't played this in a few seasons. I don't know if I have such great advice. Okay, we're just going to cut it there, though. So for the... whoops. So for the Reckoner enjoyers out there, maybe that's something that you realize you can shoot behind the crate without seeing them. Okay, we're going to Sultry next. Oh, and this was actually the other mid I was thinking of when like a carpet can work. I did mention Metalworks again, like that can work. Just, you know, if your stickies aren't landing, just leave a carpet. Who cares? Or just play for a carpet early into a mid. You still have stickies for later on, and you can maybe just insta kill something. You never know. Okay, so Sultry. Also a map that I don't have a surplus of experience in, but I have played this mid a few times. Never for a full season, but I have a decent idea of things here. So, first and foremost, the initial damage pretty much always going to be cheese, and pretty straightforward. That's where pretty much everyone's going to be rolling out, so you might be able to get initial damage on the demo and the combo. Yeah, so being fast is important here, because that might be the difference between you showing up in time to get a sticky on their demo or showing up at the same time or even slower, where, you know, neither of you get the damage, or maybe they get the damage and you don't. But yeah, that's where your initial spam is going to be. And one thing, well, let's talk about like just the important stuff. Height control, you want to be spamming that. You can totally shoot the guy. If a guy is standing here, you can totally shoot them without even seeing them. Outside of that, I mean, just getting spam on their combo. There's not going to be, this isn't like a Snakewater where there's just all people everywhere that you could be shooting at. It's pretty straightforward. Their flank might be left-sided, in which case probably unlikely to get too much spam. Maybe you could even rotate over here and do something like that. I don't know. But largely it's going to be combo damage, I'd imagine. One thing I notice a lot of demos struggle with on this map is where they kite, especially bombs, because it feels natural to be kiting kind of towards choke and, you know, playing this corner to avoid spam and stuff like that. But this is very much isolating yourself from your heals, who are almost always going to be wanting to kite back into cheese. So when you are kiting aggression or kiting bombs, or you eat a bunch of spam or whatever, you definitely want to be kiting back to your heals, which most of the time is going to be cheese. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward mid. When they are, if they're bombing, then you want to stop the cross, focus on that, and if you are bombing, then you want to get aggro. I will note, I talk about like getting aggro with a commit on pretty much every mid, because you can do that on pretty much any mid. That doesn't necessarily mean you just full cross and hold W until, you know, they wipe or you die. That just means get in such a good position that you can like hit everything. Like here, I'm not even fully like crossed the point. I'm like halfway, and like just barely charged sticks are gonna. Oh, that one's short, but just barely charged sticks are pretty much able to hit whatever you. And then like it's just a matter of realizing like how much space you have. Like if multiple people are dead and they're just like have no hope of holding on, then yeah, you can totally just try and catch people by shooting the doors or shooting them or whatever. But if like they have a demo that's offering some resistance and maybe they're still playing some spam, then yeah, you might be like a little further back trying to focus those targets instead. Like positioning you can get with a commit is really up to recognizing the situation and what you can get away with. But point being, you are given the opportunity to get more aggro because some of their players are distracted by the fact that there's soldiers landing on them. I did talk about the carpet. One thing I do like doing in this mid, and I've tried a couple times, is actually can like just carpet that back wall or something. And those stickies are short. But point being, medics might be like standing around here, and you might be able to just straight up kill them. So a carpet can be nice on Sultry. Other like tricks and gimmicks I haven't played this map enough to figure out, but I thought I'd throw that in there just because that actually worked pretty well against like advanced winning teams the few times I played this map last season. So yeah, is there anything else about Sultry that I'm forgetting? I suppose there is like the theoretical meat mid by like rolling out frog or whatever. I don't know if this is a real thing. I don't see that enough to say it's a real thing. I guess in theory it could work in the same way that like a lot of things could work in theory, but it probably has some like exploitable weaknesses or whatever that I can't really think about right now. Yeah, that's probably going to be it for Sultry. And now we move on to our last map. Assuming I didn't forget anything. I really hope I didn't forget any maps. We're going to Gullywash. I like racked my brain for like a few minutes before this, trying to figure out, like, are there really this few 5CP maps? I know it's like an 8-week season. There has to be more, right? 8-week season with like usually 2 Koth means that's 7 5CP. How many did we talk about here? Talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We talked about 7 here, but Reckoner and Sultry aren't in the pool every season. There has to be stuff I'm forgetting. I don't think it matters that much. I'm not talking about the Koths, by the way, just because Koth maps, they do have mid-fights in the sense that you can show up and have a plan for the mid-fight. But by and large, it kind of plays out pretty much the same as just regular Koth gameplay. So that's pretty similar to just regular Koth gameplay. Yeah, I think we have pretty much all the maps. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. So we're going to go to Gullywash here. Now, Gully mid is kind of wild. First and foremost, consistent rollout, very important on this mid, because pretty much your whole mid is the initial damage phase of things. So that spam into big door and the walk up is how you get most of your damage, and it's totally fine to dump a fair amount of ammo into this and focus on reloading as they're walking up and kind of staging things, because this is a map that is pretty, like, the mid's pretty fast. I think Gully is best played as a fast mid where you're bombing them before they're bombing you. And yeah, that doesn't give you a ton of time to shoot these guys and like reload and then like, oh shoot, we're already going. So as a result, most of your damage is that initial phase of things. So showing up, on time and being able to get that first sticky into big door to hit those players consistently is really important. In some cases, they're just clumped up, and that one sticky is going to do like 40 damage to like 3 or 4 separate players for like almost 200 in one stick, which is a big deal. Things to worry about for this initial state of things is just getting shoved. Sometimes a soldier might even just like fast bomb off this wall to just land on you. It's just a matter of recognizing that's happening, kiting back. Likewise, it's very commonplace for a flank scout to pressure the demo early, either by jumping onto this fence or just walking up here. If they walk up elbow, like, you have to be very careful about these boxes, because a lot of the time you will obscure your own vision, and then suddenly like the scout that was behind it the whole time is now just behind you and killing you. So you have to be worried about that. If their scout pressures by walking up, I mean, of course, if you know they're walking up elbow, then it's just the easiest thing to spam, and you can just roll them for like 80 damage or whatever, ruin their mid. Likewise, if they jump up on the fence, this is actually like very reliable damage as well. If you know they do it every mid, I will oftentimes shoot my initial stick here and then just another immediately after uncharged that's just going to be landing right on top of that fence to be hitting any scout trying to jump on it. So you do have threats early on into a mid, and those people will mostly be doing that because you're getting very aggro and getting a lot of spam on this walk up. So yeah, it's just a matter of recognizing those threats and even in some cases just outplaying them by hitting them for a ton of damage. I will give a special shout out to the lock and load on this mid, which is just insanely good for this walk up, because if their med is not paying attention or not used to the weapon, then yeah, you get that initial spam, and in some cases I will literally just shoot one extra sticky maybe by the door and then just shoot locks. If they just continue walking like normal, it's basically impossible to miss a medic in the doorway. It's just a matter of timing when you shoot the pipe for when they're walking through, and you will just kill medics. This is a mid, even without the lock, this is a mid where demos can just kill medics before they walk up, or do so much damage that they basically need that pack, and then that's really important, like, info for your team, or like good things. I have not gotten good enough to actually time the stick for when their med walks up and gets to the pack to like maybe finish them off. That is something I should focus on, because that is it's not hard to get a lot of damage on the med on the walk up, and being able to finish them off or just like do even more yourself seems very potent. Could be very powerful. Other things I see people do, I will see demos trap this with the intention, or like carpet this or whatever, with the intention of, you know, oftentimes a pocket scout will jump onto this awning and then jump onto the point. The reason they stand on that awning is soldiers might fast bomb and like land at the entrance to elbow, or they'll like double bomb while the medic is in elbow to try and like clean them up while they're kind of cornered there. And a scout on that height helps deny that. And then the trap there, of course, is to kill that scout when he walks up. This is something I very rarely go for, just because I find myself getting really good spam on this walk up. And by the time this trap would even make sense to set up, like, it would be hard to set up in advance. It feels like there'd be a big opportunity cost to it. Likewise, when the med's in elbow, I'm usually like reloading a fair amount because I shoot a fair amount on the walk up. That's just kind of how I play it, and I figured I'd point out this trap because there's multiple ways you can play this. But that initial damage on the walk up is going to be a big source of your damage, assuming your team likes to play this mid fast, like mine tend to. As far as the commit goes, it's just a matter of getting familiar with where people are and being able to hit them. And you'll see that sticky miss because I'm actually like kind of not great at this. Something to practice is getting that good damage with the commit, or just if there is some kind of in-between ongoing damage phase, being able to get good damage can be nice. I do like shooting sticks at that slant sometimes, just because a couple sticks there, people aren't going to necessarily see it, and if there's a bomb going on or whatever, you might just get a kill. But very rarely do I ever cross the point with a commit, unless the mid is going so well I'm trying to catch players. Because from here, like, not only do you just kind of have all the spam you need, for the most part, but also if their demo, like, is awake and thinking, then if you try and cross fully, you are just going to eat so much damage that it's going to be very sketchy for you. You have to worry as well. Sometimes players will try to commit into you at the same time, and suddenly, like, you're rounding this point, and then there's just like a scout in front of you. Can get a little sketch, but by and large, I think Gully is defined by that big door damage and damage on the walk up, defined by how you play against players that are trying to get aggro on you fast, in particular a flank scout, and how you play the commit. This is assuming that both teams roll out big door and choose to play their own side. You can play the other team's side, and that's a different rollout. You roll out big door. Your main goal is to walk up to their side. This is much more of a fast kind of mid. Think of the Sunshine Meat mid we talked about. So what you're looking for in this type of mid is initial damage pretty much on the demo. And yeah, you just want to walk up as fast as possible. And when I say possible, I mean you need to know where their soldiers are bombing, and you have to be careful about this demo, because if you make it too automatic where you just walk forward, this demo is going to be timing that and shooting like pipes and sticks into that corridor at the time, and you might just straight up die to that before you can walk up. Likewise, like the second that it's identified that you're playing their side, their soldiers are going to be bombing you. That's what they should be doing, is, you know, high bombing to land on their side to help defend it, prevent you guys from getting that positioning. So you might want to stall for just a moment to, you know, have an idea of where their soldiers are at, so that you're not in this tiny little corridor while they're landing on you. But yeah, once you get height, I mean, at that point, like, that's kind of the mid. Like, there's... everything should have broken out into chaos at that point, and you either have won or lost by the time you walk up. Of course, if there's players for you to shoot, you can shoot at them. If they're out, you can lock them out with sticks in the doorways. But yeah, that's a very straightforward plan for playing their side. Now, if the other team plays your side, it is important to recognize early, and the giveaway is the... So remember how I talked about the initial damage on their demo? The giveaway is that first sticky. If you see any stickies coming from Big Door, it's a pretty safe bet that they're trying to play your side, in which case your immediate response is not actually to kite back into choke. It's to kite into elbow. And the reason for this being, not only does it give you continued spam on their walk up in banana, but this is where your heals are at, so you can actually adequately get healed and, you know, fight from here. So your entire goal on a meet mid, where they're trying to play your side, is just recognize as early as possible that they're playing your side and back up into elbow, and then just play it from there. Just spam people on the walk up. I mean, again, it's just such free spam in this doorway, because, you know, no one can realistically dodge a projectile in this little doorway. So it's just a matter of timing things to get that spam. There are some times where you won't be able to back up into elbow, in which case you have to back up choke, and that's a sad state of affairs, because it's very difficult to get back in. You can get bowed from your med along this angle if you're like really weak and need it. But yeah, it's just a matter of, you know, having your soldiers free up space so you can get back in, or maybe you just lost the mid because of that, in which case you can get out. Anything else for Gullywash? I'm trying to think. I think we pretty much covered it, honestly. There might be players like lurking under the point on a mid, but as a demo you don't often shoot at that. There is a difference between the left-handed and right-handed spam. I do like gravitating towards the left side of the point, just because it feels kind of clumped up around here, and harder to like kite damage and things, versus here it's also like right in front of choke if I need to kite back a little bit. I don't think it's like the biggest deal, but it might help out your spam a little bit in those moments. And yeah, I think we might be done here then. There's no glaring 5CP maps that I didn't cover sticking out to me, so I'm probably going to wrap up things here then. Yeah, I guess final thoughts. The big one is, like, a lot of things about mid-fights people kind of already know. But one really big thing I want to point out is just the rollouts and how important they are, because I do see demos, I see demos like miss rollouts a lot, which is like whatever, but I see in like enough of the time where it kind of seems like people aren't realizing, like they think that to play a mid better, they just need to shoot things better, like figure stuff out, get better DM or whatever, when as I've demonstrated on a lot of these mids, the for some cases, the majority of your damage, or at least like enough damage to potentially even win the mid straight up, is almost automatic, purely based off timing. And you can only really achieve that timing or figure out what opportunities you have when you're showing up early, and you're showing up early consistently. So think more of rollouts as an accessory to playing a good mid fight and an accessory to getting more damage, rather than just showing up early and then, you know, independently of that, trying to focus on just hitting shots on players. Because a lot of mid fights does come down to timing, does come down to that kind of automatic initial spam that you want to get. So yeah, I think I'm going to wrap things up there. Hopefully this was useful. Kind of just on a whim, decided I had a lot to talk about on this subject. So yeah, goodbye.